I think it certainly falls into that category that it could well be somebody, a bad actor, as it were, seeking to disrupt us and just sort of unsettle us a little.
Yeah. Now, Gatwick Airport's South Terminal has now been reopened after a day of major disruption. A bomb disposal team was sent in to investigate a suspicious item, and there are still some delays and cancellations at the Sussex airport. Well, let's speak now to Lucy Lewis, who's the first female bomb disposal operator in the UK. She used to work in airport security before joining the British Army. Lucy, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
We heard the sort of news, the latest news there from Ben Clatworthy, but just wondered if you could give us a bit of analysis about what you suspect the offending object or item might have been from your experience.
Yes, thank you. Well, one of the first things that strikes to mind is that there's no hint of an arrest of a passenger for carrying a prohibited item onto a plane, which makes me think that this might have been luggage that was unaccompanied luggage in transit, because it doesn't look as if there was a passenger attached to it. And all sorts of luggage goes through Gatwick. It doesn't necessarily mean it was coming to the UK eventually. Could have been its onward destination, could have been anywhere in the world, and it could have come from anywhere in the world. The other thing that makes me think it might be unaccompanied baggage is just the length of time it's taken to resolve it. So all of that unaccompanied baggage is all scanned on very large scanners, bigger than the ones that we normally see with our hand luggage. So they're kind of industrial sized scanners to look at very big suitcases. And some of them Sorry, carry on.
No, sorry, do finish your point. Sorry, I didn't mean
some
to
of the modern suitcases are enormous. You can get a sizable device in one of those. So that's why it's probably evacuated a larger cordon than you would normally have. You mentioned that it's quite common to evacuate a part of the airport, and it is. But mostly people leave hand luggage around while they go off and get meals.
Right.
A hold luggage suitcase could be a serious size device, if it were a device. But I don't think it was. There's no talk of a controlled explosion.
Yeah.
If it was obviously a bomb, it would have been dealt with much quicker than this.
And Lucy,
I think.
just to say that the Gatwick, the breaking news is that the Gatwick security incident has been resolved and cleared by police. However, without being too alarmist, the fact that it has gone on for quite some time, we don't have confirmation about what this was. It will obviously raise questions given the heightened security situation globally, won't it?
I think it does. One of the things it could have been to take so long and be resolved by police rather than anyone else is perhaps an item that was leaking. Anything that might potentially give off a gas would have made a massive sort of clearance area, a cordon. And the bomb disposal wouldn't have been involved directly with that, but they would be on standby, which sort of fits this scenario. So I think much of the delay would be finding out what it is that's in whatever it is that's leaking or in that suitcase or in that baggage. So I think the delay was identifying the item.
Right. And I mean, I suppose that the questions that are being asked, and again, I should stress that there's no evidence today on this, but, there have been these mysterious explosions at post depots, which some have linked to possible Russian activity. There's always plausible deniability in these situations. But is that something that sort of comes into your head as a bomb disposal expert? You'd be thinking along those lines potentially?
Yeah, I'm afraid, yes, I would definitely be thinking on those lines, because something like this, we've only had to see just the disruption that it's caused. And disruption is certainly what some of the people that would wish us harm would wish to do, is disrupt our normal life. And it's quite easy to disrupt our travel arrangements just by putting a few things in the right place. You only have to remember back to people being on gantries on the M25 to see how just a couple of people can really disrupt our transport.
And that point about disruption is very interesting, because, it could be that we can't actually pin the blame on any of those, people who wish us harm that you're talking about, Russia, for example, top of the list. But just the fact that there has been disruption caused, that is a kind of MO of people linked to Russia, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And without a passenger attached to that item, it's going to be very hard to find out where its original sort of port of, its departure port was and where it was headed. it might be labelled, but labels aren't always great. So yeah, I think it certainly falls into that category, that it could well be somebody, a bad actor, as it were, seeking to disrupt us and just sort of unsettle us a little before we all start travelling for Christmas.
Well, indeed, and we're all feeling a little bit unsettled, I think it's fair to say. Lucy Lewis, a bomb disposal expert, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Ben Clatworthy is transport and travel correspondent for The Times and joins me on the line now. Good afternoon, Ben.
Good afternoon, Kathy.
Just give us the very latest on what's happened.
So, as you just mentioned, Gatwick South Terminal has now reopened after a more than 4-hour evacuation because of that suspicious item that was found in the security area at the Airport South Terminal. Now, the evacuation was the entire landside area and included the train station, which is the link into London. It didn't affect the North Terminal, but the issue is because of that public transport link at the South Terminal, passengers trying to get to the North Terminal have had huge problems as well. Now, the first flights out of the South Terminal since the evacuation have started taking off again now, but there are big delays. And looking at their departure board for this evening, there are flights that were supposed to leave at 1 o'clock still there saying inquire with the airline as to when you are going to get away.
So clearly ongoing travel disruption. These kind of threats are not unusual, evacuating airport stations. It does happen. But do we have any more about the nature of the threat here and how concerned we need to be more broadly?
We don't have vast amounts of information for obvious reasons. The airport are being relatively cagey in terms of what the exact item or items were. What they did say, though, is that it was discovered in the search area in the security hall. What we, as you say, it is quite common to have areas of airports that are cordoned off, normally through passenger carelessness. Someone leaves a bag on a chair and wanders off, and then there's a cordon put in place and the bag inspected. What's unusual is for an incident to go on as long as today's. We saw the bomb squad come. We haven't been told yet if there was any controlled explosion done, but an incident of this length is quite unusual at a British airport.
And you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, the fact that we're not being told very much and the fact that this has gone on for quite some time does clearly raise questions without being too alarmist about it.
It does, and there will be questions asked. The airlines will want to ask questions in terms of how the airport handled it. There will be of course, a whole period now of sort of looking back in terms of what it was. We know that the police were called this morning at about 8:30, yet the evacuation didn't take place until 10:30. So what was changed in terms of the identification of what the threat was? So there will be lots of looking back. There'll also be, though, this evening, a lot of passengers who are wondering if they're going to be able to get away. The airport are saying to speak to the airline. The airlines were obviously waiting to hear from the airport that the terminal was able to be reopened, and I would be highly surprised if there were not more cancellations later as the day goes on.
Ben Clatworthy, thank you very much for joining us with the very latest there on the Gatwick situation.